All right, we are back talking NFL draft, of course, on the Our Lads Football Network. It is a Friday, so this is the morning after day one, first round, and as usual, a lot to talk about. Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post joining me, and Ryan, I guess if you had to sum up the first round in a headline, what would it be?
Oh, great. Good question. And a headline. Um, I would say defense dominated, quarterbacks absent, something like that. Yeah, something like that. In New York, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's applesauce. It's duck sauce. It's if I no, you know what? Let me have a redo on that, Greg. If I was to sum up the first round, I would say New York football turned a corner. That's what I would say. I think both teams that had the worst record in the NFL over the last 5 years, 22-59 apiece. I thought they both hit it out of the park. So yeah, that might be New York bias, but I would say the New York teams were the story of the night. And then from a big picture, I would say my two biggest takeaways were one, the first five players were all offense, and I'm stunned that only one quarterback went in the whole first round. Stunned by it.
The first five players were
For
defense?
defense.
Okay. And then what was that also?
Yep. First time since 1991.
Okay. I'll say
Yep.
this regarding the Jets and the Giants draft. I think that obviously the big difference with the Jets is that they were very, very fortunate to be able to move back into the first round to get Jermaine Johnson. I mean, that just really solidified how good their draft was so far in the first round. But let's keep in mind that I think for the most part, if you had a consensus, general managers, I think everybody pretty much had the same, 10 or 12 players in the top 10 or 12. And so if you have two first round picks in the top 10, I think you should do a good job. I just, I didn't think that either one of them would do a bad job. I think we all knew they'd really succeed and get two really good players. Could they have done something that really would have shocked you where you could have gone, I can't believe they did that?
Yeah, they could. Yeah, they could have. The Texans did that. They took Derek Stingley third overall. That shocked me. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Giants or Jets could have done that. They could have taken Stingley over Sauce, which I thought Sauce was clearly the best corner, so that would have surprised me. They could have taken Charles Cross over Evan Neal. That wouldn't have surprised me, but I wouldn't have agreed with it. I would have thought that was a mistake.
So you think in general, is this also just because of the fact that not only did they get good players that they should have, but it was also they didn't do anything that was outside the box. They did at least grab players that everybody thought that they should grab.
Well, no, I don't know that I agree with that, Greg. The Giants did a great job on their smoke screens. No one connected the Giants to Kayvon Thibodeau. He's not a Giants. His big personality usually scares off the Giants. They hated it with Odell. So I'm surprised the Giants picked Kayvon Thibodeau. I am. I think he's a really good player. I'm surprised they picked him. So yeah, the Giants picked Evan Neal, who had some medical red flags. That wouldn't have surprised me if that scared them off. To me, I was impressed for the Giants. First of all, they took the best players. They didn't let some of the nonsense that they usually let get in the way. They just took the highest rated players, which, is a way to rebuild your talent base. For the Jets, I thought, they Sauce Gardner. There's a lot of hype like, oh, corners don't really matter that much in Robert Saleh's defense. Nonsense. Cornerbacks matter a ton no matter what defense you play in the NFL. They got the best one. I know teams that had Sauce as their number one corner, and I had Garrett Wilson as their number one receiver. They were both the second picked at their position, and the Jets got the number one guy at both positions. Plus, they got probably their Jermaine Johnson, they said, was in their top 8 overall players. Yes. They got 3 of their top overall 8 players. That is unbelievable to do. That's impossible to do. Now, look, Jermaine Johnson, I want to say this. I think he's a fascinating case in that both teams might be in good hands because of this. I tweeted this earlier, but I'm saying it on this podcast. The Jermaine Johnson example is fascinating to me because the Giants came out last night and said, we took Thibodeau at 5 because we thought there was a huge drop off in pass rushers. The Jets came out and said, Jermaine Johnson was Jermaine Johnson. They thought there was a drop off. They had him above Thibodeau, basically. They had him as one of their top 8 players. I think they had him as the most ready pass rusher right now. So they had him. So the Giants had the drop off Thibodeau, drop off Johnson. The Jets had Johnson, drop off Thibodeau. So they had the exact opposite opinions on those two guys. The Giants look smart because it's clear that most of the NFL agreed with them that Thibodeau was significantly better than Johnson because Johnson didn't go till pick 26. So it's clear that most of the NFL agreed with the Giants assessment, not the Jets assessment. But the Jets look smart because they had a guy that was slipping. They didn't pan. Oh, we should take him at 10. No, they took the receiver at 10 before the run on Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson, all those guys. They started the run at receiver, which is what you want to do. You want to start a run. And then when their defensive end was slipping, they didn't trade to 15 or to 17. They were patient, gave up the very least they could to get him all the way down there at 26. I mean, Shane and Douglas look like two of the smartest guys in the NFL today.
And look, I think the other thing is they were very, very fortunate, both of the organizations. And you have to be in the draft. You have to have everything go your way. And the Jets and the Giants had everything go their way because, like you said, with Thibodeau and Neal, I completely agree. I think last year, coming into, let's say if we were projecting the 2022 draft last year, or sometime even during the season last season, most people could have said Thibodeau and Neal were going to go 1 and 2.
Agree.
So the fact that they were both available for the Giants at 5 and 7, where, I mean, come on. And like you said, the Giants didn't screw it up. That they were both there. They didn't overthink it. And they took the guys, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
The thing that struck me listening to both and then, kind of texting with people is there was a level of preparedness with the Giants, with Joe Shane, that has been missing with the Giants. And that's not just a shot at Dave Gettleman, but the Giants got caught with their pants down in 2016 when the Titans traded up for Jack Conklin and the Bears traded up for Malcolm Floyd, and all of a sudden the Giants, two guys that they wanted were gone, and they're, let's pick Eli Apple. And that was a disaster. And then last year, you can tell me that they didn't get caught with their pants down, but they did when the Eagles traded up for Devonta Smith and the Giants traded down. And look, they made a good trade. They did. They made a good trade. They didn't need a quarterback. They got the first round pick that becomes Evan Neal. But point is, they got jumped again last year. They were not prepared. They didn't understand what the Eagles were about to do to them. So, now, look, one time they pivoted to Eli Apple. It was a disaster. One time they pivoted to a trade that looks like it was a smart trade. Both times you didn't get the feeling they were prepared for what was coming. Joe Shane said, and I would think the first 5 picks of last night were a surprise because I didn't see Stingley coming at 3. Joe Shane said they ran through that exact scenario 15 times. That scenario that was probably like the 15th most likely, they ran through 15 times. So how many times did they run the most likely scenario? 100?
Sure.
I mean, the level of preparedness, and you know that about Joe Douglas from his past drafts, trading up for Elijah Vera Tucker. You knew he was prepared. The level of preparedness both teams had, I thought, was probably the most professional, the biggest sign of like, hey, these two teams are professionally run that you've seen in a while.
Now, overall, like you mentioned, just taking a look at how the draft went, Stingley was the big surprise. But again, I'm going to say this, just like I said about Thibodeau and Neal. If this was a year and a half ago, maybe even last year before the season began, nobody would have been shocked with Stingley going number 3. You're talking about a phenomenal elite prospect that dropped because he just hasn't played enough. He's had injuries. He hasn't been out there very much, but he had such a fantastic freshman season when they won the national championship that he had nothing but to go down. That's just the way it is. It's like Thibodeau. Thibodeau and Stingley were so good as freshmen that you know how it goes. All of a sudden, the media, the scouts, everybody now wants to pick at them. All right, what's their issue? How can we now, chop down at their, how good they are?
That's not really fair. I don't think that's really fair. Derek Stingley lost 2 years of his career due to injuries. That's not media nitpicking at him. That's the truth.
That's for Thibodeau, though.
Thibodeau. Look, what their media, there are plays you can turn on the film where he's not giving a full effort. That's just is what it is. That's not media nitpicking. Watch the film. There's games he's not giving a full effort.
He was the same player as a freshman, and everybody thought he would be the first round pick when he came out.
He was more productive.
Well, again, I just think that's to me, and I'm not talking about it. I'm not specifically saying just the media, because the media, they're not the experts. It's the scouts. Scouts are the ones that this is their job, 24 hours a day.
Right.
And I think what happens is look, I see the same thing with quarterbacks all the time. And
your job is to find flaws. That's what your job is as a scout.
And what I really liked about this draft was that the general managers did not fall for the quarterbacks this time around. They didn't fall for all right, we got to take Pickett at 6, and we got to take Willis at 8 or Willis at 10, and all of that stuff that we were hearing was actually, no, it wasn't right, because the general managers and the scouts were smart enough to know that these guys were not talented enough to be drafted that high, and they weren't going to reach for them. And then you take a look at Carolina, Atlanta, and Seattle. We're all saying, especially Atlanta and Carolina, you know what? If we have to wait to get one of those two superstars next year, then that's exactly what we're going to do. Especially Atlanta. Now, Carolina, I have no idea what they're going to do. I'm assuming they're going to try to trade for Baker Mayfield or Jimmy G, because they can't start week 1 with Sam Darnold. They just can't do it. The fan base will explode in Carolina.
Right. I think Carolina made a mistake. You say you think they were smart. I think Carolina made a mistake not drafting Kenny Pickett. I really do.
At 6?
I think it's hard for me to say. Yeah, I would have drafted him at 6 if I had to. Ideally, and I wrote this before the draft, I think what they wanted to do was trade down from 6 to 13 and draft him then, which in hindsight would have worked out since he didn't go to 20.
Sure.
You need 2 to tango, though, and I don't know that anybody was looking to trade up to 6. Although I will say Joe Shane said he had a couple offers for 7. He had no offers for 5. So did Carolina have offers for 6? That's a fine line. No one wanted 5. 2 teams wanted 7. Maybe one of those 2 teams wanted 6. I probably, if I'm Carolina, I definitely would have tried to trade down to 13 and pick Kenny Pickett. If I couldn't do it, I would have picked him at 6. Yeah, I just think you got to know where you are. And
but again, isn't this also? But we don't know yet what their plan is. We don't know if they're going to make a trade for Baker Mayfield next week.
Okay, so I would still pick Kenny Pickett. So your plan is, so let me get that straight. Your plan is to pay Sam Darnold $20 million to be a backup to Baker Mayfield's $20 million. That's not a plan. That's not a plan. Don't tell me that's your plan. That's no plan.
They screwed up with the Darnold deal, and they either should understand that,
and then they're both going to be free agents next year. That's not a plan.
Well,
so no, I do know what their plan is. Their plan is they have no plan. I think I don't need to see what they do next. I know what they do next is they screwed up. So, I think they made a mistake not picking Kenny Pickett. Yes.
And Pittsburgh is the beneficiary because, and I've been saying this for weeks, they just don't be stupid and trade up. Just sit there, be smart. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't panic. And they just sat there. I'm sure they were tempted to trade up because they've done it before.
I'm sure that when the Saints and Lions traded up, I'm sure they thought they were one of those teams was taking Kenny Pickett. I know from sources that the Saints and Lions were very interested in Kenny Pickett. So those 2 teams trade up. If I know it, the Steelers know it. When those 2 teams trade up, you got to be thinking, okay, one of these teams is going to get a quarterback. They both trade up for receivers. At that point, Pittsburgh must have known, oh man, this is going to break our way.
Yeah. So I think that's great. I really do. I think it's a nice story to have Pickett play at Pittsburgh in college, and now he's at.
Listen, it's a great story for the media. It's great for him because what's the number one thing you worry about? Is he going to be comfortable? How's he? how's he going to adjust off the field? He's going to move right from his college dorm to a house with his fiance. He's going to, from what I understand, they share all the same facilities, practice facilities, turf fields, outdoor fields. He's going to walk right into the Steelers versus left into the Panthers, the Pitt Panthers. And literally his life is exactly the same. He's seen Mike Tomlin in that facility every day for 5 years. Yep. So, I mean, you can't ask for a more comfortable situation.
Okay, so also, again, like I said, not only did Carolina skip quarterback, Atlanta and Seattle did. So Atlanta went with exactly what we thought they would go with, and that's wide receiver, because they're so bad at that spot. And again, the plan, it was just so, you could just see it, and you heard it with blank. It's about next offseason. It's about it's not a they probably hope they win 3 or 4 games. Oh, I'm sure they hope they're competitive and they improve their young players, but they don't want to win a lot of games. They want one of those 2 quarterbacks next year. And this was an exact example of that, and I thought they made the right move. And I thought Seattle did the same thing. I don't think Seattle should have went with Willis or Pickett either. I think Seattle, now, who knows what Seattle's going to do? Like you said, maybe they trade for Mayfield.
I think Seattle is going to pick Matt Corral tonight at 40. That's what I think is going
to happen. Would be a really good, smart play, because you're not picking one of those quarterbacks at 9. You're getting him in the second round.
I don't think that's a smart play. What if they suck next year and they are picking in the top 5 next year? You can't pick a quarterback because you have.
Of course, you're going to pick a quarterback.
Then what? Then you're wasting your second round pick this year.
Who cares about Matt Corral if you can get Bryce Young?
Well, then why are you picking? Then why are you throwing away the number 40 pick?
Well, you're not throwing it away. Obviously, you want the guy to succeed.
No, you are. You're throwing it away. You're throwing it away.
No.
You're not going to play him. You're not going to play him this year. You're going to play, Drew Lock or whoever.
But that's okay.
So then what? So you're going to have Matt Corral next year. You're going to know nothing about him, and you're going to have.
How do you know? Well, no. I don't think they're not going to play him. I think they'll definitely get him some starts at some point during the season, just to see what they have.
You and I have had this argument on here many times. Don't pick a quarterback in the second round. You're never going to play him, because when you stink, you're going to be at the top of the draft. You're going to pick a first-round quarterback, and you're just going to throw away the number 40 pick. Yeah, maybe that's a pass rusher. Maybe that's a quarterback.
But there were a lot of people who thought Matt Corral, Willis, even Howell, even Ritter could have all been first-round draft picks somewhere in the 20s.
Okay, then if you pick him, commit to him next year. Don't pick Bryce Young. Don't pick CJ.
Yeah, but what's the difference if you take Corral in round 2 and not having the same philosophy?
Huh?
What's the difference then by taking Corral in round 2 and not sticking with him, just like you would have stuck with him if you picked him at 20?
You mean if you pick him at 20, you have to stick with him.
Well, why can't you stick with him if you picked him in the second round? What's the difference?
You have to. That's what I'm saying. You have to pick him.
And I have so I have no problem with.
You can't do CJ Stroud next year. You have Matt Corral.
And what I was saying was, you get the opportunity to see what you have. And if Matt Corral shows you enough and you think, you know what? I think he's going to be a good starter for us. We're committed. We're not going to go and move up and pick Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Fine.
It'll never happen. They'll be in one of those positions, and they'll pick a first-round quarterback, and they'll have wasted the number 40 pick. It happens all the time. It just happens.
But isn't it better to waste a 42nd pick than the 20th pick?
How did the Steelers? How did Mason Rudolph and Josh Dobbs? How'd those picks work out? There was garbage because
those are garbage players.
Well, I mean, they were third-round picks.
They weren't very good though. That's like Malik Willis. I don't care where Malik Willis gets drafted. He's a garbage pick.
No, I don't agree with that. You got to see that first.
I'm just telling you, he will be.
I disagree.
And we'll find out in 5 years.
But my point is the Steelers could have had a 5-year nickelback at corner, but they picked Josh Dobbs. And what happened when Ben Roethlisberger retired? They picked a first-round quarterback. So they just wasted the Dobbs pick. They just wasted the Mason Rudolph pick. They're just throwing away mid-round picks. The Giants did it with Davis Webb. They did it with Kyle Oletta. These teams do it all the time. When you're never going to trust your mid-round pick to be your starting quarterback. You're always going to pick a first-round quarterback. You're always going to do it.
Well, again, I just think it all depends on whether or not
the Broncos. We got Drew Lock. You give Drew Lock one season, and then you trade him for Russell Wilson. You just wasted the pick.
Seattle is Sure, it looks like unless they trade for Mayfield, it looks like Seattle is going to keep their fingers crossed that Drew Lock can develop. That's all they're
Yeah.
going to do. And if and look, maybe they do pick another quarterback, like you just said, in the second round. Now, you're not agreeing with that, but because only 2 teams are going to get Stroud and Young.
But there's other ones that most scouts tell you are better than the quarterback.
Well,
I think
Keaton
I had a scout.
Slovis.
I had a scout tell me there's 5 quarterbacks in next year's class that he would take over anyone besides Kenny Pickett in this class. So you could pick 15th next year, and that guy would be graded ahead of Willis and Ritter. And it's not just about Stroud and Young. There's 3 other guys that they would say are better than the guys that are left tonight.
And well, again, unless Grayson McCall comes out next year, and Keaton Slovis probably is one of those 5. I don't know who else he's talking about. Unless he's talking about Spencer Rattler, who was supposed to be a first-round draft pick and then had a terrible season. So maybe that's who he's talking about: Rattler, Slovis, and McCall. But I don't know if McCall is coming out next year because he's a redshirt sophomore. Slovis may or may not come out, and who the hell knows what Rattler's going to do? He was terrible last year. So that's just one scout. There's a huge gap between Young, Stroud, and those other 3.
Will Levis is one of them from Kentucky. That's one of them I know.
No way.
Okay.
No way.
Okay. A scout told me he'd have him ahead of Ritter.
He's wrong.
Okay.
Because there's no way Will Levis is going to end up as a better prospect. He's going to be a second-round draft pick. He's going to be just where Corral and Ritter and all these guys are going to go.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially when he has to go into a draft with Stroud and Young and possibly Slovis. Because these guys didn't have to go into the draft with those 3 potential quarterbacks. So, yeah, I don't know why, but again, every scout's different. And
it didn't hurt Mac Jones that he had to go into a draft with Zach Wilson and Dexter and Trevor Lawrence. Didn't hurt him. He still went 15th. So,
Mac Jones is better than Will Levis.
I don't know that.
I do. Come on.
Okay, I don't know that. I cannot tell you I've ever seen Will Levis play. I'll watch him next year.
Sure.
I cannot say I've never seen him throw a football. I have no idea if he's any good.
Well, just keep in mind he plays for Kentucky. That's all you need to know. All right.
Trey Lance played for North Dakota State.
I know. I'm just busting. But Will Levis, that would be news to me. Okay, so Kyle Hamilton could have went. Everybody was thinking, was he going to be drafted second? And it turns out that the 4.59 40 did affect him because he drops all the way to 14. So that was when that started to happen, and he didn't go to the Jets at 10. It was that right there was an indication. Not that, of course, the Jets loved Wilson, but Kyle Hamilton may still be a good player, but that was definitely an issue for him. Teams all of a sudden were taken back by how slow his 40 time was.
Here's what I'll say. If you name the 5 most successful organizations over the last 20 years, the Ravens are one of those teams. Why? Because good teams are good at drafting. So while everybody else is like, positional value at slow 40 times, the Ravens took 2 of the best, cleanest prospects, Pro Bowl, put Tyler Linderbaum in like 4 Pro Bowls in the next 10 years, put Kyle Hamilton in like 6 Pro Bowls in the next 10 years. They got 2 really good players. So while everybody else is overthinking it, the Ravens just kept adding to their annual 9, 10, 11 wins because they got 2 really good long-term starters. So I hate the positional value arguments. The Ravens, a smart drafting team, took 2 really good players. It really just boils down to that.
Here's the really strange ones. I mean, when you are rebuilding and you have like the worst talent in the NFL, how on earth are you taking a guard at 15 if you're Houston?
Cool. Houston.
I mean, unless the guy is, the top guard prospect to come around in the NFL in the last 10 years, which he's not, how do you take a guard at 15? I mean, that's terrible.
It surprised me. It did. It surprised me.
And then as much as I think Dotson's a nice receiver, I'm sorry, but not at 16. He's 5'10". I mean, he's this little slot fast receiver. You could find them anywhere. I just Dotson could easily have gone like late first, early second, just like Sky Moore, who's still available, and Pickens, who's still available, and Mechie, who's still available. I don't know what Washington's thinking drafting a wide receiver like Dotson at 16.
The one thing I'll say about Dotson that I thought he makes the most spectacular catches of anybody I saw all year. Like his highlight reel is insane. I mean, you talk about 50-50. He's 5'10". It don't matter. His 50-50 balls are like 90-10 in his favor. So that's the one thing I like about him. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I did a big board. I think top 100 big board. I called around. I made my own top 100 big board for the second year in a row. I think I had him like 45. So,
and then you had New England.
I had him 87. Did you see the Sean McVay reaction?
Yeah.
Please tell me you saw it.
Yes.
So good. For anybody who doesn't know, Sean McVay and Les Snead were like doing a live broadcast of the draft because what do they care? They don't have a pick till like 115 or whatever. And the Patriots made their pick of Cole Strange, and Sean McVay turns to Snead and he goes, "Wow, Cole Strange. We wasted our time looking at film of him because we thought he was going to be there at 104. They were looking at a guy at 104 that the Patriots drafted at 29. If that doesn't sum up this draft, I don't know what does. The wild variance in grades.
Yeah. So Strange, who will probably be penciled in at left guard to start the season for the Patriots, still a guy that they could have picked up a couple of rounds later. And that's really all this is about. Like you said with Dotson, this isn't saying that these players may not turn out to be good players. It's just that you have to know the board. That's all.
Well, I think the command, if that's who they wanted, I think they made the right call because you saw with the AJ Brown and Hollywood Brown trades, we haven't even gotten to those. I think John, if they wanted John Dotson, he wasn't going to be there on their second round pick. Maybe they could have traded back again. They traded from 11 to 16 to get him. Maybe they could have traded again from 16 to 20 or something like that. They were not going to get him in the second round. So I think they did. I think it's an overdraft, but if that's the guy they wanted, I think they read the board right. There were 6 receivers gone in the first 18 picks. Is that right? 6 in the first 18? That's wild.
And then you mentioned AJ Brown. So Eagles, wow. I mean, that's a huge deal there. They've been looking for another receiver. So they get AJ Brown now. So now they finally found it. And it was probably smart for the Eagles to not, Devonta Smith, they were very fortunate to get a good player like that. Like you said, they traded up to get him. That was a smart move, but they have not had a lot of success over the recent past in picking receivers. So why not just make a trade? Don't think that you're smart now because you hit it on Devonta Smith. Go after a veteran receiver, and they did. And so I think that was a great move. In Tennessee, I don't understand what Tennessee was doing, except, because if you look at it, just a year and a half ago, they looked like they were this close from being a Super Bowl contender. And then they go ahead and they let Davis go to the Jets, and they let the tight end go to the Patriots, and they go and sign Bud Dupree. And then this year, they let AJ Brown go, and they go to a rookie. I mean, why don't they just let Ryan Tannehill go now and rebuild, if that's what you're going to do? I mean, I don't understand this at all.
I agree. A year ago, April 29th, 2021, we were like, whoa, Julio Jones and AJ Brown, that might be the best receiving duo in the NFL.
Yeah.
And now this is Derrick Henry pounding the ball into the ground, 300 carries. Ryan Tannehill, you can't trust in the playoffs. I think they're probably in a rebuild mode. Yeah. They don't know it yet. They're going to go for it still. But I think they'll be one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL this year.
And thank goodness, as a Jet fan, they decided not to hold on to that pick in the first round and gave it to the Jets for Jermaine Johnson. So happy about that. Packers, look, I actually went through my mock yesterday, my last one, and I actually myself did not pick the Packers a receiver the way it worked out because I did feel a lot of these receivers would go early, and I said, you know what? Probably just go ahead. They've got a ton of second and third round picks. Use it there to pick the receivers. So I know there are a lot of Packer fans today who are freaking out that once again they didn't draft a receiver or go after a receiver, maybe by trading up in the first round. But there's so many good quality receivers left. They're definitely going to grab one or two of them.
But again, this is the craziest NFL draft that I've ever seen. The Packers' last 18 first-round draft picks have been defense.
That's crazy. It is, yeah.
So they haven't picked a first rounder on offense since they drafted Aaron Rodgers. That is incredible.
Yes.
So if I was a Packers fan, I would be livid. I don't care how good the players are. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd be livid. I don't care. I mean, look, the truth is the top 6 receivers were gone before they could pick. So, right, if they were going to pick Sky Moore or Christian Watson, they could have done that. But like they weren't going to get Treylon Burks. They weren't going to get Jamison Williams. Those guys were long gone. So I get it. It's almost an optics thing at this point. You got to give the fans and the quarterback what he wants.
You know, you see a team like Houston take Kenyon Green at 15, and you wonder, so you're trying to tell me that Houston loved him so much that they weren't willing to trade down with a team that might have moved up, like Green Bay, to ensure that they could have maybe gotten Dotson or Burks? I just, Quay Walker, I'm sorry, but Georgia was loaded with defensive players last year, and not all of them are going to be great. I think Quay Walker is just a player. I don't see him as anything special.
Look, I get college football is different than the NFL. I get it, right? And I get that there's finer points of schemes that you or I might not understand. You cannot watch Georgia and tell me Quay Walker is better than Nakobe Dean. You can't watch.
No.
You can't do it.
Good point. That's what I thought too. I was like scratching the name off linebacker, and I went, "Why am I scratching Walker's name first instead of Dean?"
You can't do it. You can't tell me he's better. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So,
and he's available still.
Yeah. So
let's talk about that. By the way, Jacksonville made a great trade up to get Devin Lloyd at 27. That was a really good trade up.
That right in the Linderbaum and Kyle Hamilton. Oh, you can't draft an inside linebacker. Devin Lloyd, you want this? We do gambling on this show, right? You want a sleeper bet for a defensive rookie of the year?
Sure.
Because the odds are going to be for Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson and all the defensive guys, Sauce Gardner. You want a sleeper bet for defensive rookie of the year? Place it as soon as you can on Devin Lloyd.
Yep. All right. Now, who's available? Every quarterback except Pickett. So the run of quarterbacks. So the teams that are sitting there today, 33 to 45, somebody's going to trade up and grab one of these quarterbacks. You might have a couple of trade ups. So all of them are still left. And that means, like you were saying, whether we agree with it or not, that means that the teams who passed on the quarterbacks like Seattle and maybe Atlanta, because Atlanta's going to get a quarterback. So maybe Atlanta, Seattle will use one of their early round picks to grab one of these guys. Because Carolina, again, they don't have a pick until the third round. Maybe Carolina will just draft someone like Carson Strong in the third round if they're fortunate enough to, still have a quarterback left on their board. But that's it. You got 5 potential quarterbacks that could go round 2 or 3 still available. And then at running back, you have both the top running backs available. Breece Hall is still there. Not a surprise.
And Kenneth Walker. Yep. First draft ever. Well, since 1967. First common era draft with no tight ends and no running backs in the first round.
Yeah. The way the game is going a little bit. McBride will be drafted first at some point, so we'll see where he goes.
Two corners I think are among the best available too. I'm sorry, I got a text at the time you were. Did you mention Booth and Gordon? They're 2 guys I think will go in the first top 10 picks tonight too.
Yeah, Booth definitely. I'm surprised Booth did not go in the first round. I think Buffalo could have easily chose Booth over Elam, and maybe it was. Maybe it was either or.
I'll tell you. It's not that anybody cares about what scoops journalists get, but I'm counting a half a scoop right. I heard the Giants were very interested in Elam if he had fallen to 36, and I tweeted it out the other day. And if he's not available at 36, but as far as I'm concerned, he went to if going to Buffalo is just like going to the Giants because they like the same exact places. I mean, if the Giants liked him, Buffalo liked him.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, that's a half a scoop.
So you have Booth, and you mentioned there's a few other cornerbacks in there as well as Gordon, like McCreary. Safety, Brisker is still available. He's the top safety. Petrie is also an interesting, type of hybrid DB back there. And then you got a load of linebackers like Dean. Dean's heading the list, but you have a ton of linebacker depth and talent. And so those guys are going to start coming off the board. Odds on Olakanle Fodokasi getting drafted by the Patriots.
They haven't drafted a Rutgers guy in a long time,
That's
right?
because Greg Schiano hasn't been there in a long time.
Correct. Yeah, correct. It's been a long time. I don't know. They could draft Bo Melton too, right?
Yeah, they
need
could.
Receivers.
Yeah, they need and then they need a returner too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I look, both of those guys who get drafted, it'll be good for Rutgers. They haven't had a draft pick in a long time. I don't know where they end up though. I actually think Melton. I actually have heard some more buzz on than Fatukasi. I wouldn't be surprised if Melton gets picked tonight, late third round, rather than tomorrow.
Yeah, because he's got the speed that NFL teams are looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, edge rushers, and there's still good edge rushers available. We knew that was going to be the case, led by Ajabo. So Ajabo, who would have been a first-round draft pick, would have been a top 20 draft pick, is still on the board after his serious knee injury. So whoever takes him, and now whoever does take a chance on him, it's not that big of a chance in a way. You do lose the extra year. There's no question about that. But you're still drafting a guy that's coming off a serious injury now in the second round instead of the first.
Well, it almost, I'm looking at right now, doesn't make sense for Tampa because you don't know how long Brady's going to play. But, like, is there another win now team towards the top after all these trades? The Vikings, could they take him?
They could take him. They need edge rushers.
Yeah. They could they're good enough that they don't need him to be a year one impact. It's a new regime, so they have time to work with. The Vikings could take him at 34.
Correct.
Like the Giants, the Texans, the
Tennessee
Giants,
could take him.
The Bears, yeah, Tennessee could take him. Yep. But the Giants at 35, the Giants at 36, the Texans at 37, the Bears 39, Seahawks 40. They need players right now. So
that's a good point. And then and they got Mafe, Ibikiti, a bunch of other edge rushers like that. And again, as we mentioned, the receivers, you got Pickens, you got Sky Moore, you got Mechie. It'd be interesting to see where David Bell goes because he had the kind of slow 40 time that Burks had, even a worse combine, but I still think he's talented enough to go in the second or third round. And then Ryman, he's the best offensive lineman available. So where does Ryman go? And I wonder if the Jets would take Ryman.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
That's because if not, then they're putting all their eggs in the fact that Becton is going to come back and start 17 games for them.
Texans, I know they took a guard, but he's a tackle.
True.
Texans 37. Seahawks took one already.
How about Hall? Where does the top running back go? He can go with Tampa Bay.
Could go to Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Do you think the Jets would take a running back to put in?
I don't. I think they love Michael Carter. I don't.
I know they love Carter, but
maybe in the fourth round. I don't think they would take one in the second round because then he jumps Carter. He has to be the number one. He has to be the number one guy.
Seattle's got back-to-back picks early.
So
yeah,
I'm trying to think who's the Seahawks running back? Is it still Chris Carson?
No, they got Penny back for another year, but it's only 1 year.
Yeah,
and they have Carson. But they could definitely draft a running back. Seattle
Falcons. Who's the Falcons
Atlanta desperately needs a running back. Yes.
Yeah, 43 Breece Hall or Kenny Walker. One of those. Pencil that in.
Yeah, Atlanta could definitely use a running back. So, and Houston, even though they got Marlon Mack, they could use a running back. He's only there for a year, possibly.
Yeah, but Houston could use everything. Yeah. That's the problem.
And once they drafted Kenyon Green, they could draft anybody now. Yeah. So when you start making moves like that, and I'm just not even... Because really, if you think about it, they made two of the stranger moves in the first round.
Yeah, correct.
So now they could do anything.
But where did Nick Caserio learn from? Bill Belichick, who made probably the strangest move in the first round. So...
Yeah, Bill Belichick. Not too many Patriot fans are happy with him today. That's for sure. But, who cares? If you're a Patriot fan, you've had a huge run. So nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Okay, so we'll be back at some point next week to recap the draft. We just wanted to take some time today just to have a quick reaction with day one and then go over what's available for day two. But we'll recap the draft and everything about it early next week. And I'm assuming you're going to have a bunch of articles you're going to spit out here in the next few days.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm on NFL duty tonight, and then I'll have draft grades on Saturday. Not on Giants or Jets specifically, just on NFL duty. I'll probably be writing the quarterbacks tonight. And then I'll have draft grades tomorrow. And
Oh,
then,
good. You'll write about the quarterbacks tonight. That should
yeah,
be interesting.
yeah, you know how I feel.
Yeah, exactly. You should just go, okay, before I say anything about all these quarterbacks, nobody should have drafted any of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's basically how I feel about it. So.
Well, let's keep in mind, though, what I also wanted to say was there are teams that should draft quarterbacks, not in the second round, but should draft quarterbacks if they have other needs that aren't met by where they're drafting, where they can go into third, fourth, fifth round to draft a long-term number 2. So
that's fine. Yeah, long-term number 2 is fine.
Yeah. So there is that. But you definitely, nobody's drafting quarterbacks in the third or fifth round thinking that they're going to be their franchise quarterback. They may be hoping that's part of it, but chances are pretty low. What is it? Like Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Those are the only 3 I could think of right off the bat.
Dak.
And Dak. Okay. So there's 4 of them. All right. Anyway, we're out of here. Ryan, appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the weekend because this is just the beginning.
Yep. It's and then when will we start breaking down our 2023 draft? June 1st?
No. Well,
see you later, Greg.
Sometime before the season begins for college 2022.
See you later.
Take care.